Welcome to the Happy Market Research Podcast, your favorite place for strategies, stories, and insights from the world of market research. Brought to you by your host, Dan Fleetwood.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Happy Market Research Podcast, or if it's your first time listening, welcome. Today we have Cecilia Rodriguez from Discover Puerto Rico. She's going to be coming on to talk about understanding travelers through research, turning data into actionable insights, and industry trends and consumer insights. So, Cecilia, welcome to the show.
Hi, Dan. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So, to kick it off, for those that might not know you or who you are and your background, can you tell us a little bit about that, and then kind of segue into what led you into a career in market research?
Sure. It all started really with hospitality. I had my first experience thanks to a college program, really off of my freshman year. And I started working in the cruise industry and really fell in love with just working in the industry and welcoming visitors and making sure they have a good experience and teaching them about Puerto Rico and all that we are. And it was really a natural transition after graduating to move over within the hospitality space, initially with the Puerto Rico Convention Bureau, which is basically my first experience with destination marketing. And then I moved over to the hotel space, originally in hotel sales while I finished up my marketing MBA. And then I moved over to analytics, and that's where it gets a lot of fun. Yeah. I did hotel analytics starting in 2013. I didn't know it at the time, but it was a great experience. It was very challenging because we went through a lot of interesting situations in time in Puerto Rico. We all went through, the pandemic in 2020, but Puerto Rico actually had a lot of challenges a few years before. So I really had a front seat within the hotel space to see how the market or the travel industry reacted to things such as Zika, which was our first illness scare, and how that affected demand in the travel industry. Then that was, of course, followed by Hurricane Maria and earthquakes, and then the pandemic. So it was a great space to learn about how consumer behavior shifts depending on all of these circumstances, which not a lot of destinations can say they went through with the pandemic. And then, of course, I got recruited in Discover Puerto Rico about 3.5 years ago to join their research and analytics department. So really, analytics has been my forte all these years, but I love to lean in on my marketing research, education, and now experience in the last 3.5 years. Lots of fun. It's a great company to work with.
Yeah, I was thinking about this as you were talking. It's probably tough to work in an industry and do research on that with like natural disasters or, global pandemics that you largely don't have any control over, but yet it really affects not only the tourism, but also just your research, right? Because you could be predicting that, hey, we're going to have record numbers or all hotel rooms are going to be filled, whatever those metrics you look at. But something like, a hurricane could come through and then it's like out the window. So how do you deal with things like that? I'm curious.
I went through that so many times. Oh, the pacing looks wonderful. And then you get hit a curveball. It makes forecasting, of course, challenging. And it also makes historical comparisons very challenging. When I was working within the hotels, trying to make budgets, for example, for next year, you would go crazy because you couldn't compare on every year wasn't normal. You had to throw in a curveball. So you did your best and you kind of went with the flow, and everybody was in the same boat. So you just aligned efforts and learned from each experience, because each experience had its own little kind of recovery curve and which markets answered first. And that's we kind of lead into that and use that information and take it day by day, because there's some tough times.
Yeah, day by day for sure. I can imagine. Yeah. What are, a brand like Discover Puerto Rico has got to be exciting. What is some of the most exciting things that you have to work on or that you get to work on in consumer insights for a brand like Discover Puerto Rico?
Well, my favorite thing right now is I get to use all of this real experience, consumer facing experience, now combined with business intelligence tools, right? So I get to really educate the stakeholders and the local industry and really explain things that sometimes are hard to understand in really manageable terms. So it gives a lot of credibility when I see a graph and people see a line or our graph and I go, this was happening because of this and this and this and this. It gives a lot of context to really what we present and then a lot of trust as well. So I like that part of just using all the experience that I had and just educating people on the industry and trends and using that information for good.
Yeah, that's a good point, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. So kind of want to dive into more of understanding travelers through research. How do you approach understanding visitor behavior and preferences to a destination like Puerto Rico? I'm curious.
Well, I think it applies to most destinations, but really the industry is kind of like a jigsaw puzzle, right? It's composed of so many pieces. So my job really is to gather as many pieces of information that we can to try to have the most clear picture of what is going on. So it's not just the lodging component, it's the air component, it's the cruise ship component. It is what the government is doing or collecting in room taxes. It is gathering visitor profile information of the studies that we do. We actually interview people in different points of interest. Sometimes it's the airport, which, we gather a lot of people that went all over the island. But we also visit smaller towns like Ponce in the south or Aguadilla in the west and gather information about the experiences that they had. That's really a very thorough survey. And thank you for all of the couple of thousand people that are willing to give that much information. We also try to understand visitor behavior. We're an island, so you have to fly here or you're coming in via cruise ship. We don't have that drive, market that the cities in the US have. So it's a lot easier to work with origin data from airline information. So that's a really key piece of information. And that is cross-checked with geolocation data. Again, if you don't live in Puerto Rico, you're coming into the island, then we can have some geolocation data on travel behavior. So how long do you stay here? A lot of times people will move around the island. So the hotel length of stay might be shorter, but we know the trip is actually 5 or 6 days. So it kind of gives you more information. Also, what regions of the island they visit and also which points of interest they visit as well. So just, again, a lot of data that then we can share with the different towns and we can share maybe cross-marketing opportunities between points of interest. We also, of course, we track lodging data. That's very important. So that we can more in the last few years, we really wanted to see if demand had normalized, and it had after a lot of zigzagging post pandemic because of the different fires. The Omicrons of the day.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That you'll be doing okay, and then a new version will pop up, and you'll throw everything away again. Anyhow, and of course, we always talk with the industry partners, people that are on the front lines. They'll always tell you what's going on and what they're seeing. So all these pieces really help us create the most clearest picture that we can draw, and it changes continuously too.
Yeah, it's got to be tough too, because I'm thinking there's probably other similar products or services. I know this, but with your brand and what you're marketing, a lot of the entities are not in your direct control, right? You have to realize what cruise ships are doing, flights to the island, the airport, the hotels. So there's a lot that you're trying to market, and I think you guys do a great job of, presenting Puerto Rico, but it's got to be tough because the product essentially is Puerto Rico, but it's also made up of entities that are outside of Discover Puerto Rico. So that's got to be an interesting challenge too.
Yeah, well, we try to work with many vendors in terms of getting as much data as we can. Some of them are research related, like the visitor profile. We work with entities to create that, but some of them are just data providers that offer that flight information, just having an idea of what the seat capacity is looking like, where are people coming from on the flight, so that we can kind of hone in and place media in the markets that have the best chance of lifting visitation, right? That are attached to the ads. So we do a lot of information sharing on that.
Yeah, that's interesting. In terms of balancing traditional research methods and newer approaches, is this something that you look at, and how do you make that? How do you make that balance?
Well, there's the new tendency to do a lot of dashboards, and
Yeah.
we're on that. We have a business intelligence tool that helps us. I use it for a couple of things. Well, a few things. One of them, of course, it's web based, so we give credentials to the people that need to have access to the information, particular stakeholders or board directors. If they want to take a look at our numbers from anywhere and anytime, they have access to that. It also warehouses a lot of our historical information. I use it as a lot for validation. If I'm doing my own calculations and then I go back to the tool that already is programmed, I go, okay, I did my math right. So that's between you and I and the audience. I do that too.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone does that. You're speaking the truth right now, right? So
right. Okay. Thank you. But of course, traditional research methods have a space too. It's nice to have face-to-face interviews with people and have those conversations as well. So we do a little bit of everything, watching out for any new technologies or any new opportunities out there that exist.
Yeah, that's interesting. Where are you on the AI front? Are you integrating AI into your research? Is it something that you're just experimenting with? Where are you at there?
We're not using it yet. We do have an AI component for the use of our visitors that's integrated in our webpage. Like if you go to discoverpuertorico.com, you actually have a tool that is scraping data from our website. So if you want to ask a really specific question about a visit to Puerto Rico, that's a great tool for trip planning. It's actually really smart. Those things are kind of scary sometimes. But I haven't done any research yet. We were approached maybe a few years ago or maybe less from a company that was using AI to transfer, for example, qualitative video interviews and process that conversation into actual data points and keywords. And I see the value in that because that will save time and you can actually do more in-depth, research instead of just a regular qualitative survey. So we're in the space of open. We're just trying to work within our budget some of these opportunities while trying to maintain some of the research that we've done throughout the past for consistency and for benchmarking and progress. So it's kind of like a balance. We want to integrate new things, but keep some of the old things for tracking purposes.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So that's a great approach, I think.
Yeah.
Let's move on to turning data into actionable insights. I think this is probably why you like analytics so much, is my guess. So what makes the difference between, I should back up a step. So oftentimes research is done, right? And then people look at it, but it sits on a shelf somewhere and no one actually takes any action on it. Yeah. What do you think is the difference between research that sits on a shelf versus research that actually drives that decision making?
We do a lot of. I'm thinking of IKEA and a closet. We compartmentalize a lot of data, and yes, some of it is for. I don't want to say you put them in the drawer. It's just that it's not actionable, so you have it as a reference. And if something comes up, then you look for it and you have the information ready. So we have some of that. We do a lot of research for, especially in the last few years, for kind of like high funnel, aspirational thinking of the brand Puerto Rico. So you can have, these campaigns that are high level. But then, for example, research that tracks, for example, the booking pace. And we know we're slow in these, in the second quarter coming up. Then we can shift over, because of the research and the tracking, we can shift over to more low funnel media buy-ins and have more, book now type of ads and trying to push those last minute reservations into those need periods. Right. Now, the key here is really communication. It's between research and digital marketing and communications and having that conversation continually and a lot of teamwork to make sure that the research really does work in these types of situations.
Yeah. So it sounds like timely research is largely the difference between sitting on the shelf and actually driving decision. All things being equal, of course, but yeah.
Of course.
What's an example that you've had recently or in the past where insights has directly influenced either the marketing or a strategic decision, something like that?
Well, we worked a couple of years ago. I think it's already been 3 years. It was in 2022. Uh, we were launching a new campaign after the post-COVID kind of revenge travel
Oh yeah, that was
era.
a thing. That was a big thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was. And our campaign was literally, we're ready to welcome you, because
Mhm.
that was the feeling. Like, it's time. Literally, it was called, okay, it's time. You can
Yeah.
come back, and
Time. Yeah.
we're ready for you. Literally, that was the name of the campaign. So we were looking for something else to differentiate Puerto Rico from other destinations. And we did a lot of research. And one of the questions that, of course, we asked is, why do you choose to, what would you choose to come to Puerto Rico? And of course, there was always the usual suspects of, well, the weather is nice, the Caribbean, or the beaches are nice. That's a given for the most
Hmm.
part. But then local culture came up a lot.
Hmm.
And it was interesting because, local culture is something that we can actually, work with and be different from everywhere else. But we actually had to adjust it depending on the market. Because if you live in, cities like New York or Orlando or Philly, where you have a lot of Puerto Rican communities, you work with them, or your kids go to school with them, you're a lot more familiar with the island and the culture. But
Right.
if we went on to more expansion markets, like in the Midwest or Texas, they weren't really familiar with it. So we actually did and created the Live Boricua campaign.
Mhm.
Boricua meaning Puerto Rican, coming from the indigenous name of the island. And we invited you to come to the island and experience that as authentic culture. You're coming in, you're going to be among us. You can learn about, how we live, what we think is important. Now our food is which is delicious. Dan, we need to bring you down to Puerto Rico. You know
Hmm.
that. And also, uh, but in the expansion markets where there wasn't a lot of familiarity, then it was strategically placed, all the media, with a lot more beach and waterfall products and nature products, all these scenic beauty. For those that didn't know what Puerto Rico was, we wanted to introduce them really, okay, this is what I think is going to appeal to you because you don't know a lot about the island, versus the campaigns for people that were more familiar with Puerto Rico. It was a lot of faces. It was a lot of
Hmm.
food that you remember eating. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh, I need to go to the beach and, get a beer and that thing.
Yeah.
I know what that tastes like. It's a huge driver. So that's, a couple of things, how the research kind of aligned the idea of the campaign. And then further, when you go into it, then you can actually segment through the type of visitor. And it worked.
Hmm.
It was very, very popular.
In terms of like success of a campaign, how do you measure that success? Is it like number of visitors on an island, or do you have different surveys or research that you do?
Well, we track the number of visitors two ways. Of course, people that actually arrive in an airplane, but we also work with tourism economics to have some of the visitation numbers
Mhm.
on a yearly basis. But we also track the impact of our advertising, either through brand health or ad recall. And also recently we did return on investment. All of our budget at Discover Puerto Rico comes from local room taxes. So
Mhm.
we want to make sure we use those funds as best as effectively as we can.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons that a lot of times it's that investment is aligned with some of our core market, that East Coast, Florida market, where we know it's more likely to have that lift in visitation. Although recently we were able to expand to other markets internationally and also to the Midwest. But everything is measured. We try to track. That's why it's hard to incorporate new technologies, because you're already tracking using, and you have older results, and you want to measure kind of apples to apples. So
Mhm.
kind of adding new studies to incorporate those narrow technologies for sure.
Yeah, yeah, no, that makes sense. And then in terms of, collecting data is one thing, but then communicating the research findings is a whole nother, area. How do you do that in a way that resonates with like stakeholders or executives or those people that you really need to, I'll say, convince that this is correct? And, you got to tell that story. So how do you do that?
Well, that's one thing we do a lot. We have a lot
Yeah.
of communications and meetings. There's a lot of eyes on Discover Puerto Rico locally. We actually one of the interesting things about the organization is we have a lot of boards. We have the executive board, composed of different stakeholders, local government and business people. But we also have a marketing board that oversees us. We have a local stakeholder that then incorporates people from small businesses, and everybody has an opinion. But everybody is very informed. We are always sharing either on those specific boards, but we also share a lot of information publicly. Through our website, we are always sharing what we call the industry portal. And it's a page within our website where we load tools that the local industry can use. Our visitor profile is uploaded there. We do monthly dashboards that kind of has a highlight of industry metrics, along with a lot of marketing efforts that took place in the previous month. We also have, they organize a lot of town halls all around the island. Sometimes are just for the town people, but a lot of times towns are very small. So the entire region kind of shows up, and you have the opportunity to present results and new tools. If, we have over 30,000 pictures of Puerto Rico, and we give people access to all of them if they want to, incorporate them into their own marketing pieces. And if it's a restaurant or if it has to be related to tourism, because all in all, what we want is consistent branding around the island, right? So if you have a short-term rental or a small business that caters to tourists and you want to have a beautiful picture of Puerto Rico incorporated, you can just log into our photo shelter and use one of those. So we try to, it's not only research, it's just the marketing apparatus. We try to share and give people as many tools as possible to kind of piggyback on all of our efforts that we're doing anyway.
Yeah, it sounds like a very transparent, process and very collaborative, it sounds like. So that's very good. I like that.
I'm going to take that, Dan. I like that.
Okay, you can. Yeah, feel free. Oh, interesting. So as we move into more industry trends, in consumer insights, I'm curious what you've seen as like the biggest change in research over the past few years. So what do you think?
Well, consumer trends has been interesting this year in particular. The Caribbean and of course the Puerto Rico high season in travel, meaning when we have the most amount of visitors from outside of Puerto Rico paying the highest rates. It's whenever it's cold in the US, right? That window between December and wherever Easter holiday falls, that's the sweet part. And a lot of businesses, they make or break their year depending on how good that high season was. And this high season was spectacular. Demand was there. All the numbers were super, super positive. So we saw that trend, or those results rather. Well, we did see trends and shifts in lodging preferences, for example, especially in the summer. We were noticing shifts from people choosing short-term rentals versus hotel stays. And it kind of makes sense if you think about it, because during the summer, there's a lot of family travel. So any listing with multiple guest rooms is appealing, and they stay for a longer periods of time. So, having amenities or kitchens or stuff like that will help you work around your budget. And there's also rental properties all around the island that you can experience. So not every trip has to be the same. You can actually have many different experiences depending on what region of the island you visit. So we noticed that the market share of reservations has been growing a lot towards the rental market, while the demand for hotel nights has been kind of flat, which is okay. We don't want it to go down. If it's at the same level as last year, we'll take it. And it's actually aligned with what the numbers we're looking at nationally too. So another shift that we saw this year, which was very interesting, was the impact of entertainment or concert tourism.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, we saw it with Beyonce and Taylor Swift, right? Every time they visited a city during their tours. Dan, I don't know if you're a fan of Bad Bunny.
I've heard of Bad Bunny, but I couldn't say I'm a fan. So
that's okay. But he doesn't need you, because he sold 21 concerts right now for August and September. I mean, that wasn't very nice. Maybe he needs you, but
he might. Maybe he doesn't know that he needs me yet.
Well, Bad Bunny has a very strong global fan base, and he decided to do 30 concerts in Puerto Rico. The first 9 concerts were sold, at least the first dibs of the concert tickets were for locals, and he sold those. And then his company worked around 21 additional concerts in the city that were tied to hotel stays. So 2-night hotel packages, and then it included the concert tickets. So he sold about close to 500,000 tickets.
Wow, that's crazy.
And you know how long it took him to sell 500,000?
What,
About
couple
4 hours.
Oh,
What?
4 hours. Okay. I was going to say a couple hours. Yeah, four. Wow.
All the way to 4 hours to sell that.
That's
So
wild. Wow.
the interesting thing about that residency is that they most of the hotels were available during low season, which is August and September. So it really pushed, especially those year-over-year booking pace numbers that we saw since the beginning of the year. It was announced in January. It totally blew those comparisons. And so far, we're getting data for August. It's still kind of early for it, but really, really good numbers that are certainly tied to that concert, appeal and to that experiential trip motivation for these clients. So it was a good opportunity to prove that Puerto Rico could do that type of thing, and also, doubling down on the economic impact of that market too.
It's interesting. Did that show up in research, Cecilia, or was that just more like an opportunity? How did you guys identify that?
Well, they interviewed the organizers recently, and they weren't sure if it was going to work. So I think the artist is really, I have huge amounts of respect in his marketing brain and his team, because they kind of throw everything out there, and a lot of things that are very unconventional tend to work for him. So I think that it was kind of like a trust fall kind of thing. We're going to do this and see how it goes. And it was very successful, to the point that the other trend that we're looking at is more international visitors to Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is technically a U.S. domestic destination. We're within, it's a U.S. territory, and about 90% of our visitation comes from the U.S. But it does, yes. But we saw some increases here and there from Latin America. It's been going on for the last few years because of new routes that have opened up between San Juan, specifically Colombia, Medellin and Bogota, Costa Rica, San Jose, and also more seats from Spain. So little by little, we're getting more international visitors. And one thing that it wasn't our research, but it was one of the third-party researchers that they shared information with us, is some of the international markets. In that case, it was specifically Canadians. They don't necessarily look at Puerto Rico as U.S. in terms of places that they want to avoid visiting. Sorry.
No, it happens. It happens, yeah.
Yeah. So we're kind of in a gray area for many aspects, geopolitical. And in that sense, we could gain some international visitation that may want to try alternate continental U.S., I guess, cities, if you want to put it like that. But we've seen it in the numbers. We've seen some growth in international visitations, specifically for the concert, but also in the last few months as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. Wow, a lot goes into it. When we first started talking, I was so intrigued, just like what Discover Puerto Rico and what you all are about. But there's a lot of facets to it, way more than I thought. So I applaud you guys for looking into all of these and taking action on them. Yeah.
Thank you. We're very thorough.
Yeah.
we do.
Yeah. So I'm curious, what's a piece of advice you would give someone looking to strengthen their career in consumer insights or research? What advice do you have for people out there?
I think you have to learn constantly. You have to be very curious about learning about people, about new tools that are out there. Try to figure out if you are working already in the industry, trying out tools and weeding out what you really don't need, like what's not nice to have, because there's so much data out there and you're very excited. And in the end, it's not that it's not useful. It's just that it's not worth sometimes the investment. So you kind of have to play around with what you really want to focus on. We're part of the Tourism and Travel Research Association, which is a great organization. They do a couple events a year in conferences, and it's a good opportunity to network with other DMO researchers and providers. There's always trade shows with the new businesses that you can get to know. So that's good. And also, if you're already in the career, and our director of research actually does this, there's kind of like an email thread where if you're a DMO and you're going through, or you have a question or a case, you can actually, there's like a list of people that you can consult from other DMOs, because a lot of us have the same issues, and maybe you can share best practices, or you can share already things that have worked. Or maybe you can all agree that that's really hard to measure and don't even try it. So just a lot of cooperation within the research space on the DMOs. So I that's what I would kind of go with.
No, that makes sense. It makes sense. Last question here. Has there been like a book or podcast or resource that has helped shaped how you think about research that might help out other people or people listening to this?
Well, I am like a webinar junkie. Every time I get an inbox, oh, we're having this webinar, and I just sign up for everything. So Destinations International, Skift, US Travel, Future Partners, anytime any of our industry sources has a webinar, tourism economics is a really good one. I always sign up, even if I'm busy with another thing scheduled. They'll always have like the recording or the deck. And it's really a great resource for up-to-date information, see what's going on. And there's so much uncertainty now. So forward planning is really hard. Right now, I'm looking at our PACE numbers, which look great. So I'm like, well, everything is looking great. But then you have all this barrage of negativity or uncertainty around economic policy and decisions that you don't know how it could affect. Maybe it doesn't affect travel. So all these, all these sources, I think, are important to follow and to then share with the local industry, which is what we do too.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I really appreciate you coming on. And if listeners want to connect with you, learn more about your work, where should they go? Where would you point them?
Thank you. Well, I'm actually really social media shy. I'm not really, you would think, right? I talk a lot, but I'm pretty shy in the social media space. So if anybody wants, if this conversation was of interest, if you want to connect on LinkedIn, so you can just throw Cecilia Rodriguez, Discover Puerto Rico, and you'll find me there, and you'll see all my experience and connect with me via that.
Awesome. Hey, thanks so much for coming on, and we really appreciate it. And for everyone listening, thank you so much. If you like this, you found value, feel free to share it, follow, like, do all the things to help out the show. And we just hope you got a lot of value out of it. So thank you. Thank you, Cecilia, for coming on. And with that, we will see you on the next one. So thanks, y'all.